She thought she'd destroyed me, but I'd already outsmarted her cruel game. My name is Bryce Warwick. At 42, I'd spent 13 years building a career as a financial advisor at Meridian Solutions in Spokane, Washington. I specialized in high net worth portfolios, quiet, methodical work that most people, including my wife Nora, found boring. The call came on a Thursday evening in April. Nora was supposedly at a pharmaceutical sales conference in San Diego. I was in our kitchen reviewing client documents when my phone lit up with her name. "I'm done with you, Bryce," she spat, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're nothing compared to him." "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice oddly calm. "I'm not coming home." I set down my pen. "What's going on?" "I've met someone. It's been happening for a while." Her voice had that practiced quality she used with difficult clients. "It's Victor, my boss." My grip tightened on the phone, anger flaring. "Your boss?" I said, voice low. "You're throwing away 14 years for him?" She laughed, sharp and venomous. "You never had what it takes." I said nothing, just listened to her breathe through the phone. "He understands me. He sees my potential." She paused, then twisted the knife. "I've already emptied our shared investment account. My lawyer said it was the smart move." "You think you've won?" I whispered to myself, her words fueling a fire inside me. The joint account we'd built over 14 years of marriage, the one she rarely checked but enjoyed the benefits of. "I understand," I said quietly. "That's it? You understand?" Her voice cracked slightly, the first genuine emotion in the conversation. "Pathetic," she hissed. "No fight, no spine." I stayed silent, letting her arrogance stoke my resolve. "Take care, Nora." I ended the call and set my phone face down on the counter. Then I opened my laptop and logged into our financial portal. She'd initiated a transfer $248,000, 0 cents, from what she thought was our main investment fund. What appeared on my screen confirmed what I already knew. The transfer was pending approval. My approval. I closed the laptop without taking action. "You have no idea what's coming," I muttered, a cold smile forming. 7 months earlier, I'd noticed the first signs. Weekend conferences that didn't appear on her company calendar. Dinner charges in downtown Spokane on nights she was supposedly out of town. A missed call from Victor at 10 p.m. that she scrambled to explain away. I'd stared at that call log, suspicion gnawing. Who calls at 10 p.m. for work, I'd thought, starting to track her lies. Being a numbers guy has its advantages. You notice patterns. You plan ahead. 4 months ago, I'd restructured our accounts, creating a new joint account with a modest balance while quietly moving our real assets into a separate trust. The paperwork sat in my desk drawer, signed by Nora without her ever reading the details. She'd been too busy texting under the table. I'd watched her that day, distracted, oblivious. "You're making this too easy," I'd thought. This system was working exactly as designed. The withdrawal she'd initiated required dual authentication for amounts over $12,000, 0 cents, a safeguard I'd specifically requested. Tomorrow morning, she'd discover what pending really meant. I touched the papers in the drawer. "You thought I was blind," I said to the empty room. "I've been ready for you." Nora and I met 19 years ago at a financial conference in Portland. She worked for Solera Pharmaceuticals, a rising company with a promising pipeline of drugs. She was ambitious, sharp, and knew how to work a room. I was quiet, analytical, and noticed details others missed. We balanced each other. When we married 3 years later, we mapped out our future with the same precision I used for my clients' portfolios. Weekend hikes in the mountains, dinner parties with colleagues, a schedule for building our investment accounts, children by year 6. "We'll have it all," she'd said, her eyes bright. I believed her, but her ambition always burned hotter than mine. But the children never came. After 4 years of trying, the doctor's verdict was delivered in his sterile office. My low sperm count made natural conception unlikely. Nora cried in the car afterward. I held her hand and promised we'd explore other options. We never did. Instead, she threw herself into her career. More conferences, more client dinners, more late nights. I focused on growing my client list at Meridian, building a reputation for steady, unflashy returns that outlasted market volatility. Our home became a way station between her trips and my long hours at the office. "You're always working," she'd snap, her patience fraying. "And you're never here," I'd counter. Her silence cut deeper than words. The first real crack appeared 4 years ago. I'd planned a weekend in Coeur d'Alene for our anniversary. When I told her, she hesitated before saying she'd already committed to a sales retreat that same weekend. "I can't just cancel, Bryce. This is with the executive team." I went alone and hiked the trails we'd once enjoyed together. When she called that night, I could hear laughter and music in the background. "Who's with you?" I asked, suspicion rising. "Just the team," she lied, too smoothly. I didn't push, but I started watching closer. More cracks followed. Separate vacations became normal, conversations shortened to logistics about the house or bills. Physical intimacy dwindled to occasional perfunctory encounters that felt like items checked off a list. Then came Victor Hammond, her new regional director. Suddenly, Nora was volunteering for every committee, every conference, every special project that might cross his desk. "He values my input," she'd say. "He thinks I'm being wasted in my current role." I noticed the change in her texts and emails, always keeping her phone face down, stepping outside for calls, password protecting folders on her laptop. Classic signs I'd seen in other failing marriages but never expected in my own. I didn't confront her. Instead, I watched, counted, and quietly prepared. I documented the patterns in a spreadsheet. Dates of mysterious charges, locations that didn't match her stated itinerary, withdrawals from our accounts that exceeded our agreed spending limits. When she left her email open one morning and I saw the hotel confirmation for a room in her name and Victor, I didn't say a word. I simply adjusted my plans. "You're slipping, Nora," I thought, saving the email and catching every move. The morning after her call, I sat in my home office, staring at the transfer request still blinking on my screen. $248,000, 0 cents pending approval. With one click, I could deny it. With another, I could approve it and watch her walk away with nearly everything we had built. I did neither. Instead, I pulled the folder I'd prepared 4 months earlier. Inside was the complete documentation of our financial restructuring. The new trust in my name alone contained $915,000, 0 cents, the bulk of our investments, now legally separated from the joint account she thought she'd emptied. I leaned back, her betrayal sinking in. "You thought you'd outsmart me," I said aloud. "I'm 2 steps ahead." The doorbell rang. On my porch stood Lila, Nora's closest friend and colleague at Solara. Her face was tight, uncomfortable. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, leading her to the kitchen, where I poured coffee neither of us would drink. "She told me to come get some of her things," Lila said, clutching her purse strap. "She's not coming back, Bryce." "I know." Lila's eyes wouldn't meet mine. "She asked me to get her jewelry box from the bedroom and her winter clothes." "You know about Victor," I said. Not a question. Lila flinched. I tried to talk her out of it, but she wouldn't listen. "How long? 9 months? Maybe longer?" She finally looked at me. "I'm sorry, 9 months. Nearly a year of lies, all while she slept beside me, discussed house renovations, planned holidays." "The jewelry's in the safe," I said. "She knows the combination, always has." Lila didn't move. She also wanted me to check if her transfer went through. There it was, the real reason for the visit. Not clothes or jewelry, but money. I opened my laptop, turned it so she could see the screen. "Pending approval," I said quietly. "Dual authentication for amounts over $12,000, 0 cents. It's in our agreement." "She'll be furious," Lila whispered. "That's her choice. She thinks she's won," I said, voice cold. "Tell her she's gravely mistaken." After Leela left with a suitcase of designer clothes, but no financial confirmation, I drove to my office at Meridian. The familiar routine of client calls and portfolio reviews felt suddenly hollow. At lunch, I walked to my bank and initiated the next phase of my plan. By 2:00, my phone had 8 missed calls from Nora. I ignored them all and drove to my lawyer's office. Simon had been my client for 12 years before becoming my friend. He reviewed the documents I'd brought, bank statements showing Nora's attempted withdrawal, credit card records revealing doubled expenses in cities that matched her boss's travel itinerary, hotel confirmations sent to her personal email. "This is more than enough," Simon said, sliding the papers into a folder. "We'll file first thing tomorrow. Financial misconduct, marital abandonment. Washington doesn't require fault for divorce, but these will matter for the financial settlement." I nodded, feeling a strange hollowness where rage should have been. This wasn't about revenge, it was about mathematics. Every action has consequences. A principle I'd built my career on. "She thinks she emptied our accounts," I said. "Let her keep thinking that for now." "She'll panic when the denial hits," Simon said, grinning. "Let her squirm." 4 days passed without me answering Nora's increasingly frantic calls. On the 5th day, I returned home to find her standing in our living room. She'd used her key, the one she hadn't bothered to leave behind when she declared our marriage over. "What did you do?" she demanded, her carefully applied makeup contrasting with the wildness in her eyes. "The money is gone." I set my briefcase down calmly. "No, Nora, the money isn't gone. It's exactly where it's supposed to be." She thrust her phone at me, showing the bank's message. "Transfer denied. Dual authorization required. Fix this," she said. "Now?" "You think you can bully me?" I said, stepping closer. "You're not in control anymore." I walked past her to the kitchen, poured a glass of water. "We need to talk about the divorce." "Divorce? I haven't even..." She stopped herself. "I meant to discuss that after I got settled. After you took the money," I clarified. Her face hardened. "Half of that money is mine. I earned it. Did Victor tell you that?" I asked quietly. The color drained from her face. "This isn't about him. It's about trust, Nora, and legally binding financial agreements." She changed tactics, her voice softening. "I was emotional. I didn't mean to end things like that. We should talk about this properly." The sudden shift to conciliation. This was the Nora who closed difficult sales, who convinced reluctant doctors to switch prescriptions. I'd watched her perfect this technique over years of dinner parties. "Simon Pierce is handling the divorce," I said. "You can have your lawyer contact him." Her eyes narrowed. "You already have a lawyer?" "Filed yesterday morning." She paced the living room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors she'd insisted on installing last year. "You can't just lock me out of our money, Bryce." "I'll fight this." "As is your right." My calm seemed to infuriate her more than argument would have. She grabbed a framed photo from our mantel, us in Coeur d'Alene before the separate vacations began, and hurled it against the wall. Glass shattered across the floor. "Victor was right about you," she hissed. "You're pathetic. No ambition, no backbone." I looked at the broken frame, the spider-webbed glass over my smiling face. "I'll need your key back." "You're nothing," she spat, trembling with rage. "I'll ruin you." I met her gaze unflinching. "Try it, Nora. You'll lose everything." "This isn't over," she said, digging in her purse and throwing the key onto the coffee table. "Not even close." After she stormed out, I swept up the broken glass, careful to get every shard. Then I poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon and made a call. "She came to the house," I told Simon. "Expect it." He said the bank notified her about the transfer rejection. "Yes, she wants access to our money." Simon chuckled. "Good luck with that. The trust is ironclad." "She's desperate now," I said. "That's when she'll slip." The next morning, my assistant at Meridian placed a letter on my desk from Nora's lawyer, Elton Marsh. The firm's letterhead showcased downtown offices and 3 named partners. The letter demanded immediate release of jointly held marital assets and threatened legal action for financial abuse and restraint of rightful access to shared property. I scanned to the bottom, noting that Victor Hammond was copied on the correspondence. So her boss was directly involved now, using his connections to pressure me. They're doubling down, I thought, almost impressed. That afternoon, Simon filed our amended divorce petition, adding documentation of Nora's attempt to empty the accounts without consultation, along with a request for a temporary restraining order preventing her from entering our home again. "They think you're the weak one," Simon said over the phone. "That's good. Let them underestimate you." I didn't respond to the lawyer's letter. Instead, I waited for their next move, knowing they'd only strengthen my position with each aggressive step. In financial planning, patience is more than a virtue, it's a strategy. They're overplaying their hand, Simon said. We've got them trapped. 3 weeks later, I received a text from an unknown number. Coffee, important information about N. Riverside Cafe, 3 p.m. today. Curiosity overcame caution. At the appointed time, I sat in the back corner of the cafe, watching the door. 10 minutes later, a woman in a tailored suit entered, scanning the room until she spotted me. Alicia Vance, Solera's HR director. We'd met at company functions over the years, exchanged pleasantries about market trends and Spokane's weather. Now she sat across from me, ordered nothing, and placed a thumb drive on the table. I can't be seen with you, she said quietly. This conversation never happened. What's on the drive? Emails between Victor and Nora going back 16 months. I kept my expression neutral. Why are you doing this? She glanced around before answering. Victor's done this before, 3 times that I know of. Pursues married women who report to him, convinces them to leave their husbands, promises promotions. Once they've burned their bridges, he discards them. And Solera allows this. Alicia's mouth tightened. His father sits on the board, but there's more at stake now. These emails discuss confidential product information that was later shared with competitors. The implications settled coldly. Industrial espionage. She nodded. Victor's been selling research data, using Nora to access files she shouldn't have. The FBI is already investigating, but quietly. And Nora? Either complicit or manipulated, I don't know which. Alicia stood. I should go, use that information however you need to. He betrayed me and he used her, I thought, pocketing the drive. They'll both pay. After she left, I ordered coffee and plugged the drive into my laptop. The emails confirmed everything. The affair, the plans to leave me, Victor's promises of promotion and relocation to San Diego. But the industrial espionage angle was new. Screenshots showed Nora accessing research databases after hours, forwarding proprietary information to Victor's personal email. Whether she knew what he was doing with it remained unclear. One exchange from 4 months ago caught my attention. Victor, once you're free from the accountant, we'll move forward with everything, San Diego office director title, the works. Nora, what about his financial expertise? Could be useful. Victor, trust me, we don't need him. Just get what you can from the accounts and we'll handle the rest. They'd planned to use me, then discard me, and Nora had considered leveraging my financial knowledge before Victor dismissed the idea. I copied the files, then drove directly to Simon's office. He reviewed the emails while I stared out his window at the mountains in the distance. This changes things, he said finally. The industrial espionage angle could trigger criminal charges. I don't want her in prison, I said, surprising myself with the realization. I just want out. Then we use this as leverage. She backs off the financial claims, signs the divorce agreement on our terms, and we don't share this with the FBI. And Victor? Simon raised an eyebrow. You still care what happens to him? No, I said, but I care what happens next. They plan to ruin me, I said, voice steady. Now they'll face the fallout. That evening, I received a formal settlement offer from Nora's lawyer. She wanted 60% of all marital assets, the house, and ongoing alimony. I forwarded it to Simon with a single line. Time to use the thumb drive. The next day, Simon sent a counter-proposal. Nora would relinquish all claims to the trust, accept a one-time settlement of $60,000, 0 cents, and sign a non-disclosure agreement about both the marriage and her activities at Solera. Attached was a single email from the thumb drive, enough to demonstrate what we had, not enough to show our full hand. Her lawyer's response came within hours. We need to meet. They're scared, Simon said when I arrived. We've got the upper hand. The meeting was set for Simon's office. I arrived early, reviewed our strategy, and waited in the conference room. When Nora entered with her lawyer, Elton Marsh, she wouldn't meet my eyes. Marsh, a silver-hued man with an expensive suit and practiced smile, spoke first. We appreciate your willingness to discuss a reasonable settlement. Simon slid copies of our proposal across the table. Our terms are non-negotiable. Marsh scanned the document, his smile fading. This is absurd. Your client is offering practically nothing. My client is offering silence, Simon countered, which, given the circumstances, is quite valuable. Nora finally looked at me, her expression a mixture of anger and fear. You're blackmailing me. No, I said quietly. I'm protecting myself. Simon opened a folder and removed printed copies of selected emails. He placed them precisely before Marsh, who read them with growing discomfort. These are private communications, he objected. These are evidence of corporate espionage, Simon corrected, which federal prosecutors would find extremely interesting. Nora's composure cracked. You don't understand. Victor said it was just market research, nothing illegal. Yet you accessed secure databases after hours and forwarded confidential information to his personal email, I said. You betrayed me, I said, voice cutting, and now you're caught in his mess. Marsh leaned toward Nora, whispering urgently. She shook her head several times before he turned back to us. We need to confer privately. Simon nodded. Take all the time you need. The FBI certainly will. They left the room, and Simon gave me an approving nod. You're holding up well. This isn't how I expected my marriage to end, I admitted. No one does, Simon said, about your coming out on top. 20 minutes later, they returned. Marsh looked resigned. My client is prepared to accept your terms with one modification. She wants assurance that you won't forward these emails to Solera or any law enforcement agency. Simon looked at me. I considered Nora sitting across from me, the woman I'd once built a life with. Whatever she'd done, sending her to prison wouldn't undo the betrayal. Agreed, I said, provided the agreement is signed today and the divorce processed without further contest. Marsh nodded. We'll need to review the final language. Already prepared, Simon said, producing the documents. 2 hours later, it was done. Nora signed away her claims to our assets in exchange for $60,000 0 cents and my silence. The house would be sold with proceeds going to my trust. No alimony, no further contact. As she stood to leave, Nora paused. Was any of it real for you? The question caught me off guard. All of it was real for me, I answered truthfully. That was the difference between us. I loved you, I said, voice breaking. You chose him and broke us. Her eyes flickered with something, regret maybe, but she said nothing. After they left, Simon shook my hand. Congratulations, you'll be officially divorced in 90 days. I nodded, feeling hollow despite the victory. What about Victor? Not our problem, Simon started, but stopped when he saw my expression. What are you thinking? That Solara deserves to know what kind of man they have running their sales department? I tapped the thumb drive. Even if Nora gets immunity, Simon considered this. Technically, our agreement only prevents you from reporting this. It doesn't cover anonymous tips. That evening, I created a new email account and carefully selected key documents from the thumb drive. Only those showing Victor's actions, nothing incriminating Nora directly. I sent them to Solera's CEO, board members, and compliance department, then permanently deleted the account. Burn, Victor, I whispered, hitting send, a grim satisfaction settling in. 4 days later, the business section of the Spokane Chronicle ran a small article. Pharmaceutical executive resigns amid internal investigation. Victor Hammond had left Solera Pharmaceuticals effective immediately. No official reason was given. Nora texted me once, I know it was you. It didn't respond. Some equations balanced themselves, but the victory felt heavy, tainted by the loss of what we'd once had. 8 weeks later, I sat in my lawyer's office, signing the final divorce papers. Simon handed me a copy of Nora's new employment agreement, secured through his network of corporate contacts. She'd taken a position with a small pharmaceutical distributor in Tucson, entry-level sales, significant pay cut, no corner office. Victor was reportedly in San Diego, but unemployed and under federal investigation. She had to sell her car to make rent, Simon commented. The $60,000 won't last long at her previous spending rate. I felt no satisfaction at this news, just a dull acknowledgement of financial reality, actions, and consequences. She chased a lie, I said quietly, and it cost her everything. That afternoon, I received a certified letter from Solera Pharmaceuticals. The internal investigation had uncovered my anonymous tip. Rather than pursue legal action against me for accessing their proprietary information through the thumb drive, they were offering me a consulting position with their financial compliance department. We believe your expertise and ethical standards would be an asset to our organization during this restructuring period. The letter read. Alicia Vance had signed it personally, adding a handwritten note. Justice comes in unexpected forms. I accepted the offer the following day. They see my worth, I thought, a spark of pride cutting through the numbness. 2 months after finalizing the divorce, I received an unexpected email from Lila, Nora's former friend. Bryce, I thought you should know that Nora and Victor have separated. He never followed through on any of his promises. She's struggling but too proud to admit it. She asked about you, whether you were seeing anyone new. I told her I wouldn't discuss your life with her, just thought you should know. Take care. L. I closed the email without responding. The justice wasn't in Nora's downfall or my financial security. It was in the quiet restoration of truth, the numbers finally balancing as they should have all along. The revenge wasn't in taking something from her, but in finally recognizing my own worth. Her question lingered, though. Had it been real? I'd never know, and that hurt more than I'd admit. 1 year after Nora's late-night call from San Diego, I stood in the foyer of my new home in the Spokane suburbs, smaller than our previous house, but solely mine, with a view of the mountains from the back deck. The consulting work with Solera had evolved into a full-time position, heading their new financial compliance division with work that didn't build up and work that mattered beyond just growing wealth. My phone buzzed with a text from Elise, a corporate attorney I'd met through the Solera legal department. Our third date was scheduled for tonight, dinner at a quiet restaurant downtown where we could continue our conversation about hiking trails and financial regulation. Topics that would have bored Nora to tears, but that Elise found as engaging as I did. I smiled at her message, a flicker of hope warming the ache inside. I hadn't heard from Nora in months. Through mutual connections, I knew she'd left the pharmaceutical industry entirely, taking a teaching position at a community college in Arizona, a simpler life than she'd planned, but perhaps a more honest one. As I adjusted my tie in the mirror, I realized the hollow feeling had finally disappeared. The betrayal no longer defined me. It had simply become part of my history, a painful chapter that had eventually led to something better. I locked the door behind me and walked to my car. The trust fund that Nora had tried to empty now funded scholarships for students pursuing financial ethics certifications, a small way of transforming what was meant to harm into something constructive. But as I drove, the mountains looming steady, I felt the weight of what was lost. Not just Nora, but the man I'd been, trusting, naive. I'd rebuilt, stronger, but the scars whispered, trust carefully. The numbers had balanced, but the human equation was messier. Elise waited, a new beginning, yet I knew I'd carry Nora's betrayal always, a quiet reminder that even the best plans can't shield the heart. I parked, took a breath, and stepped into the evening, ready but wary, building a life not perfect, but mine.